Good and welcome to this Focus On. I'm Zanella Morrison. The African Bank's full-year results for 2022 showed an upward growth of nearly 40%. The bank managed to grow its loan book after relaxed lending criteria early last year. Zwelibanzi Manyati, Group Executive Business Banking at African Bank, joins me now to delve deeper into these results, but also to talk about the Grindrod and Ubank journey integration into one African Bank. Zweli, let's jump straight into a conversation about, first of all, seeing that we now just recently received your results for the year ending in September. Your strategy has really started to yield the results because these are incredible numbers. Speak to us a little bit about some of the highlights that we see in your annual report, be it net profit, your group net profits, etc. What for you is really the markers of the best part of the year?
Thank you, Zanele. I think if we go back and look at the Accelerate 25, we actually called out a few things that we wanted to achieve. One of those things that we called out was we wanted to diversify in this particular result set came very much through when you looked at the mix of funding that we've got. We have been able to grow our retail base very, very well. And that's very important for the cost of funding going forward. But it also suggests that the franchise is becoming more and more bought or appealing to a broader consumer segment. That for us is part of the diversification that we're looking for. We have got a transactional business. Transactional banking is doing very well. I mean, today, we're talking about 60,000 new customers joining African Bank every month. I mean, that in itself is good progress. And then our credit card business, yes, the base is low, but it's actually growing very well. That's all part of what we want to achieve from a diversification perspective. So for me, I think that these results really talk to excellent execution to make sure that we diversify the bank, which is what called out as part of the Accelerate 25. So for me, that's the real big key deliverable that we've successfully executed on to begin this journey of diversifying the business.
So what did you have to do? Because you've entered into a market that we thought we could not have imagined that there was this much space for room and for growth. Yes, you probably managed operating expenses. How did you do that? Could the constrained environment or the volatile environment prompted you quite quickly to not expand operational costs? Therefore, you saved on that, and operational income as well seems to have fed really, really well. And then you also had quite a huge increase, even on something like 26% increase in the retail disbursement growth, as well as corporate loans. Where was this room sitting? How did you manage to make these advances internally as well as looking at the market externally?
So there's a few things that we did. First was to just strengthen the sales and distribution capability in the bank. The productivity is off the charts as we speak. And there's still room for improving that even further. So operationally, we actually made sure that teams that engage with customers are properly trained, properly resourced, and properly measured. So that gave us the kind of numbers that you see. And of course, we repositioned the brand. That when you went to the market and say we are these audacious people, there's quite a lot of equity that we've got in the market for that, and we are appealing to a much broader spectrum of customers than we did in the past. And yes, we did manage cost, but this was more a revenue play than it was a cost play, because if you look at the lift in revenues. Is substantially bigger than what we've seen as a saving on the operating costs. And of course, we'll continue to manage costs judiciously going forward. But the African Bank story is a story of investment, as you can imagine. The transactions that we have dealt this year is all about investing. And there's going to be even further investment as you diversify the business further. So I think that it's not one thing.
Yeah.
It's a couple of things that we got right.
Absolutely. I think your results are definitely worth looking into. It's interesting that you've grown your business quite a lot in the digital space. You've managed physical space quite a bit. But also what's really great to see is the collection fees that have also stabilized. Yes. So you're really buckling the trend of assumptions often made about the sector that you're servicing.
Yes, we are. The sector is challenging, as you can imagine. It's very difficult economic conditions. But I think that it's accumulation of all of these interventions that have given us these awesome results. And the idea is for us to continue to leverage on the muscle that we've just built to make sure that the bank can sustainably deliver these good numbers going forward. And of course, you spoke about a corporate exposure. We've got one corporate exposure, and that's, you might call it putting a toe in the water for what we're going to be doing. But it also was a very, very good exposure, performs very well, priced very well, and we're happy with it.
Brilliant. So you spoke a little bit, so speaking on the back of those acquisitions, let's go through to the choice you made when it comes to Grindrod. We can speak a little bit about Ubank as well. So you're moving into the Grindrod space, property and all that Grindrod has to offer, vastly different to what you're doing. Big challenge in creating one business now, and how are you going to get it to a point where it's a seamless one business for the African citizen, from the parent to the children to generational to businesses? How are you going to do that and create a seamless offering?
So, Zanele, we've got just on the Grindrod one, it's slap bang on the strategy. We said we wanted to diversify, and this is diversifying into business as well as diversification from a product set. You spoke about commercial property. We've got invoice discounting. We've got your normal term funding for businesses. And we're going into the market in the first quarter with our first transactional banking product, which will be backed by later on with digital access on an app and on internet. So we actually are excited about this transaction. And yes, it is true to say that these transactions are actually, it's easier to look at a proposal and work on a proposal and present that to the board. Now it's, time to work. We need to integrate people, cultures, and we need to engage with the customers of Grindrod with the value proposition that they've got, because we need to adjust it. Because right now it appeals to part of the market, the top end of the market. We need to make sure that we can cover the whole spectrum of small enterprises, which means we've got to come down the pyramid. And we need to build solutions that don't necessarily exist in Grindrod, like digital lending. We're busy, with our plans to make sure that we can execute that in a short possible time. So it's exciting times for us. And how do we bring this into one organization, African Bank? We've got very interesting values and cultures work that is being taken through across Ubank, African Bank, and Grindrod Bank. I even forget to call the three banks because we're trying to build into one. But we have got a very clear, program that we're already executing on around values, around cultures. Canadian and the other executives are full-time engaging with our people to make sure that we create this cohesive. There's always going to be a difference, obviously, in the go-to-market when you go to business banking compared to consumer. There's always going to be a difference. However, you will find instances where you bank a person as an entrepreneur and you bank them as an individual. We need to make sure that we get that relationships seamlessly so that they can experience us as one bank as opposed to silos.
I can just see the change in Transformation Bank. You know, the logo says from 3 to 1. So it's going to be fun, but it's hard work.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's hard work to integrate organizations, especially one like Grindrod with its history and time as well, you know, and then looking at African Bank, which is a completely different, era of a business. But great work, lots of work required. You probably have quite a number of years to do that. UBank, for me, made a lot of sense because it's so much more easier to integrate into your business. What was the core reason that you brought UBank on, and are there any challenges in some of the decisions you make when you make acquisitions? Because it's not all just upside. There's also some challenges.
Yeah, whenever you do these things, you identify some of the risks that pertains to the transaction. But you make sure that you've got plans to manage those risks. There's always residuals, though, that you've got to be alive to, which we will come to know about as we execute on the integration. But the UBank transaction is easy. I agree with you. It was easy in the sense that same markets, and all it does, it takes you to geographically. It takes you into mining areas. And when you look at why African Bank was born and why UBank was born, they were both born of necessity, and to address this issue of inclusion for Black people in particular, who up until then didn't enjoy the easy access to banking and financial services. So both organizations have got almost similar heritage. So culturally, you can imagine retail bankers actually, they tend to have, they work in a certain way. So I haven't experienced fundamental differences between the retail bank in African Bank and UBank. So I'm not suggesting that there are not going to be challenges, because as soon as you got to, in some instances, you've got to rationalize the network. In some instances, people get unsettled. But the good thing about us is we are a growth story. We are unlikely to be looking at shedding any jobs. As a matter of fact, we are employing more people. On the business banking side, we've got lots and lots of opportunities for all the people who belong here, whether you're Grindrod or African Bank or UBank. If you've got what it takes to make us winners in business banking, you'll be allowed to move it that way. So there are challenges and excitement in this.
This is definitely a story that needs to be held, and I needed more time, but I hope we'll be able to have this conversation again and see how you are evolving into 2023 and how that year goes. And that was Zwelibanzi Manyathi, Group Executive Business Banking at African Bank, and great conversation. Look forward to the next one. I'm Zanele Morrison, and this was Focus On.